extremely well received in Montreal since the first time you played here back in 2002.
Yeah.
What do you think you got a connection with the Montreal fans?
I believe that the Montreal fans in general get closest to the European audience of all the Northern American audiences. That might be one reason. They're keen of traditional music, but they like progression, and they have a certain understanding of celebrating a show, like being they are being the main actor, and we as a band appreciate that, and we like to interact with audiences, and this is for an audience like the Montreal one, heaven, I believe.
I remember also the second to last from Corona, you tried to interact with the audience between the first 3 or 4 songs, and you couldn't even put a word in there.
Yeah.
That was so loud.
Yeah, oh yeah, we have had that from time to time. Yeah, why not? I mean, I have in-ears, and if, for example, the audience becomes too loud, then they are turned off. And I can still understand myself, but this is exactly how a band would like to have their people going. If one accomplishes it so early, as you said, then it is the vibe of the audience in general, and it's a privilege for us as artists to play in front of such an audience. Sometimes we have to work on it, sometimes we don't. Obviously, there we didn't.
So, building on that, you got bigger and bigger each time you came to Montreal. Is the Heavy Montreal Festival the next logical step for you guys?
I hope so. I have heard a lot about the festival, and we have been welcomed here very nicely. So my expectations for tonight, well, for this afternoon, I have to say, which is quite unusual for me to say so, they are high, of course. I'm expecting people who might not be familiar with Blind Guardian. I don't know how the music scene or the metal scene in Montreal in general works, but since there are so many other bands playing who come from a different musical direction, I believe we're playing in front of an audience which is not 100% familiar with the band, and of course we will try to draw the attention of these people as well, and hopefully they will come by when we do a next show.
Okay. Not the new sound, but the evolution of the band included more and more orchestration. Is this something that limits you and when you do live shows?
No, what is limiting us a little bit is the length of the songs. Like, for instance, we usually start our shows with the Ninth Wave. Today, 45 minutes, I was, playing along with the songs, and I finally said, well, if we, invest 10 minutes in the Ninth Wave, that's too much, we can't do it today, let's go for Into the Storm, for example. So we are limited there a little bit by some of the songs, and we are also limited in terms of the complication of songs in general, but that's a fact ever since Nightfall. If not Nightfall, then since A Night at the Opera, we only can play a certain amount of new songs, because to deliver these songs technically in a proper way, it takes a lot of time of preparation, and we need to be very confident before we play them. So we're just there, let's say 5 new songs at the highest when we come by with a new album, and that is partly adapted to the classical orchestration, but it's more adapted to what Andre is doing on the guitar, the arrangements in general, which are quite complicated, and of course the vocal layers as well. So I have to find my way through, and with a song like The Ninth Wave, it went pretty well. Other songs like Twilight of the Gods, for example, which appears far easier, became the far more complicated song. It took so much time away, perform that in a proper way. I'm surprised myself always, and as said, that has been the case ever since Nightfall.
But you do not limit yourself when you write or record the album.
True.
rehearsing part. You just write it out,
Yeah.
and then you'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Live-wise.
Unfortunately, or luckily, I'm not sure how to say, that's exactly how it is. We keep our minds on creativity and on composing when we're at home. It has nothing to do with any consideration about how to perform that live. You know, that comes later. Once we are in the mixing and we may have a little leisure time to, you know, prepare ourselves for the next shows, then it becomes a big issue. But during the process of creativity, there is no thought about that. And I would be afraid sometimes, I think, and it would limit the options during songwriting. So we are absolutely open when we do songwriting. We have a few discussions about which directions to go and where we can explore new dimensions, which might become a part of the Blind Guardian universe. But other than that, and these discussions, the whole songwriting is freestyle. We just go for whatever come into our mind, and we work, or we continue working on stuff only if we see the value in the parts. Sometimes we create 3 or 4 pieces which, you know, appear not attractive to us, and then we just throw it away. And we usually never get back to these parts.
Next Blind Guardian album will be fully orchestral, right?
The regular studio album, yes. We do the live album first. That's going to be released in 2017. The orchestral stuff is done in terms of orchestral performances, apart from 2 songs, I think. But I will have to do all the vocals. I was basically scheduled for February, March doing it, but then we skipped ideas because of certain missions we have had. But now the idea is starting the vocals for the orchestral album in November. And it may take a while because the voice has to be very clean, and after touring for 6 weeks, I'm usually a little destroyed.
Is this a project that was in the books for a while, or
Yes.
is this something that just came up and had to work on it a long time?
It has been in the books for a while. We started in 1998, and ever since we thought, well, with the next regular studio album, we're going to release the orchestral album directly. And with every period of a new album, we only managed to compose another 2, 3 at the highest new orchestral albums, so that we now have 12, 14, 15 songs. And we on this first output, there's probably 10 orchestral songs out of this 20 years.
The Blind Guardian's been around for 30 years,
Mhm.
or almost. What's the secret of you guys not killing each other or going simply insane over that period of time?
I don't know. It's pure luck. Sometimes there was hate, there was pressure, understanding, maybe awareness. That's probably what every one of the Blind Guardian guys can consider to be one of the quality of himself. We allow ourselves to have space, you know, in between each other. So once we're on the road, we are together while we're playing, and we may drink a beer together here and there, but in general, even if we're in the same room, everyone has his privacy, and that worked very well. And we clarify all difficult things before we go on the road, for example. So when we're on the road, there's not a lot of discussion about, you know, business or creativity. It's just, you know, having a mission, playing, performing, having fun on stage, and this has helped also. Maybe it's also based on the simple fact that we started as friends and we established that friendship. And also, as said, awareness is a very important thing. We are aware that, you know, the problems would not vanish if one of the guys would leave the band, and the problems do not vanish if we, you know, get complicated situations with each other which will not be clarified. So if there's something wrong, we clarify directly.
On this side of the ocean, never had a chance to see you play bass live.
Yeah.
Is this something that you're missing?
No. I have to be honest, I didn't play bass for almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. Before I realized I haven't played for 20 years. The only thing which was concerning me a little bit in the beginning, when I started doing vocals on stage or being only an entertainer, was how to work with body language, with my particular body language, and that was complicated. And at that point, I became aware of the comfortable situation having a bass on stage, because it makes life far easier. Even if the playing wasn't good, for the performance it was easier. And to follow the band when there's a solo, for example, and not being apart during that piece of music, a bass was better, because I was constantly forced to keep my focus on the music, while as a vocalist you have your parts off and then you have to get in immediately and be there on spot. This was complicated for me in the beginning. I now have managed to work with it, but the bass itself, the playing, no. I did compose a little bit on the bass when we did Beyond the Red Mirror, but that was for the first time after, as said, almost 20 years.
Your career with Blind Guardian, is there landmark albums or moments that define what came about now?
Yes, since we played Wacken 2 days ago, and I suppose, or I believe, it was a very big success for the band. I have to say that the Wacken Festival in general is a sort of landmark. If you leave a spot there, as we did 2 days ago, I'm pretty sure that must be considered to be a landmark, because things change afterwards a little bit. So it has been in 2002 when we played there, and the Blind Guardian Festival in 2003 was another landmark. So, but they have to be combined, these two shows, I would say. They have been a very, very, very important landmark for us, because it was an approval that we are a mainstream band. Even though we're metal and we have strong connections to the underground, at that point it was obvious, Blind Guardian has made it. It's a top-notch band in terms of success. So these two shows together would have been another landmark. Then our first Japan tour, same thing, was the first major mainstream success we've had. Needs to be seen as a landmark. And then, it's albums. And I could say almost every album has been a sort of landmark, but maybe the most important landmark has been Nightfall, Middle-earth, or A Night at the Opera, because we started reinventing ourselves at that point. And I believe that this is something many bands are not able to survive, and we survived it, because usually fans, they give up their old idols once there is such drastic change. And in our case, I believe we somehow managed to keep the old fans, and we, on the other hand, managed to draw the attention of new people, becoming Blind Guardian fans.
Are there songs that you wish you could play live, or that are too hard to play either for your vocals or other instruments?
Yes, we all struggle with problems, of course, but obviously vocals, and especially if we talk about layered vocals and the big choir orchestrations, are more difficult to be transposed into a good live situation than the instruments themselves. So on my side, the problem is probably a little bigger than with the other guys, but I know that they have songs which they are not able to play as well, or where they are at least afraid of. In my case, I have to say, just listening to A Night at the Opera, which I did yesterday, just proves me one more time it's so difficult to weave in songs of this era, apart from And Then There Was Silence, because they are technically perfect songs which are very, very difficult to be transposed into a live situation. We did try Battlefield many, many times, and we always failed. Doing the Curse of Fairnov, for example, from Nightfall, is vocally demanding, but it's not a big problem. We did that a couple of times nowadays, but this is very difficult for Andre, for example, because the lead licks he's playing are so they are so difficult and so fast that he really has problems to be properly well. So you see there are also problems for the instrumentalists sometimes. Opera is very difficult. A song which I would love to play, and I hope we will get the chance to play one day, is Noldor. But this is one of the songs I'm really afraid of because it's vocally very demanding. And sometimes it's easy to transpose, you go an octave below and it still sounds nice, or you mix a little bit of everything. But some of the songs, and that's in many cases of the Night at the Opera album a problem, they are high pitch, and since the instruments are playing certain melodies, you cannot go one octave low, or the one octave is low already because there are such big jumps in there. So this makes it very difficult.
In North America, on the Imagination tour, what came about of playing the whole album?
Basically, the idea came up because we did play in North America already, and yes, we have prepared a few new songs, but not enough for a whole set. So at a point we were discussing what can we deliver to the people in North America when they come by for a second time, and we just figured, well, we can play a handful of new songs which they haven't heard, but a majority of the songs would be the same than last time. And at that point we said, well, that is not a good solution, so why not doing something else? And then Andre and Markus came up with the idea of Imaginations, and I'm not fond of playing whole albums, but since Imaginations is an album which has a strong live quality and it doesn't feel like a concept album, to say so, it was a very good solution, I thought, and I agreed on doing so. So we did basically the easiest thing for us to do so, and guaranteeing the people to come to a show and see completely new songs, or more or less new songs.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to that show as well.
So am I.